there's two ways you can take that. You can spiral out of control, and your season can go down the tubes pretty quickly. And I think a lot of guys can get frustrated and fed up, and the chemistry of the team can suffer. But I think, likewise, you can take it and learn from it, and try to spin a handful of positives out of it, genuinely. It's easy to say, oh, we're over it, but to actually figure out how to overcome that sort of adversity and become stronger as a team is a whole different challenge. And I think that we try to embrace that and try to encourage that. Full name is Taylor Kiel. I'm 31. Originally from Champaign, Illinois. Lived in Indianapolis since 1991, 2, something like that. So been there for a while. Consider Indy my home. Job title here is team manager. Kind of all-encompassing. I think the general description would be just looking after the two IndyCar programs that we have here. Logistics, personnel, just the day-to-day operations of the team generally is kind of my responsibility. So took over some of the responsibilities halfway through 2016. 17 was my first full year in the role, and then this year will be obviously working my second year. I've been with this team since, I believe, 2008, 9. I'm going on 10 years here, so however long that is. Yeah, originally Sam gave me a great opportunity out of college to just get my foot in the door in racing. It's something that I always wanted to do, was be involved in racing, and I know that it's all about you just got to get your foot in the door somewhere and then work your way up. So Sam gave me an opportunity. He expanded his operation to 4 lights cars and had an opening, so took me on. It was a big risk on his behalf. I mean, up to that point, I had some experience in go-karting and fiddling around with some other stuff, but not a lot. So it was very much a risk on his end, but just learn on the fly and kind of worked my way through the system. Started out as a mechanic, obviously. Worked on the 7 car under a guy named John Roof. John was an established guy for the team. You know John pretty well. John's a great guy. He taught me a whole lot. And then John moved on, and we had a situation where another guy came in named Chris Muir. Chris ran the car, and I worked under him and learned a lot from Chris as well. And then the opportunity presented itself a year later to take over a car on my own. So I was a crew chief for Esteban Guerrieri. Was my first year. Had a whole lot of fun with that. Learned a lot as well there. But kind of after that, was a crew chief on a lights car for a couple of years, and then Sam purchased FASD Racing, and then I made the jump to go IndyCar racing at that point. And from there, I was mechanic on Tristan Vautier's car. Had a chance to work on Simon's car the year after. Made a run at the championship. That was a blast. You learned a whole lot in that situation too. Kind of takes your game to the next level. And then in the year after that, I took over a car on my own again with James Jakes. That was my first year as a crew chief. That was eye-opening experience. Crew chief on an Indy Lights car is one thing. Crew chief on an Indy car is another. It's more people, bigger car obviously, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. I was blessed to have a lot of really good people on that car working around me, so it made the transition a lot easier. And then I stayed with that program. James obviously left and went and did something else. Mikhail came back into the fold, worked with him. Yeah, and it's just been kind of a roller coaster ride since I've been here. I think people were pretty accepting of who I was. I mean, a lot of the guys on the team had worked with me in one capacity or another. I mean, we're small enough that you kind of work with everybody in this team, right? So I think, at least I would hope, that my work ethic and what I did kind of spoke for itself. And I think I try to go about my business treating people with respect. And I think when you do that, you earn respect in the same regard. So I think that for me, it wasn't, taking over and having a position of power. It was more of just, here's an opportunity for a new challenge. You got a lot of really good guys to work with, and those guys were all very accepting and very helpful. Everybody did their job and helped me learn how to do mine, and it was a really easy transition. And I never really encountered any sort of kickback from anybody. I think it was just all about, let's get on and do our job and try to be the best team that we can be. it was something that I was always exposed to from my earliest memories. Some of my greatest memories were at racetracks. Most of my friends are through racing. So for me, it was always home. So, you know, went to IU and studied business, but ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, it was about I wanted to take that and apply it to racing one way or another. Going the route of mechanic, you know, I'd always thought I'd maybe be an engineer or something, right? But at the end of the day, it was how I got my foot in the door, and I think that's it was the right path for me. I really enjoyed every step of the way, and now ultimately I'm here, and I'm very happy that I'm here. I don't have any regrets. It's exactly what I thought it would be most of the time. Sometimes it's not, but for me, it's always been my passion. So I'm thrilled that I get to live that out. I've done everything but fuel the car at this point. I've been over the wall for the last handful of years. It's a totally different ball game. It's a very mental exercise. Being able to maintain your focus over the course of the race. I think one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that when you have that headset on, you've got 10 different voices in your ear at any given time, right? So being able to pick out the information that you need to. The way we're structured on the timing stand, you know, again, I keep hammering this point home, but we got a lot of really great people on the timing stand. So it's not all on me to say, all right, this is what we're going to do. You know, there's information coming in from different sources. We like to make a collaborative effort at it. You know, I think that you're fooling yourself if you just say that, hey, this is the end all be all, this is our guy that's going to make all the calls. I think that's kind of foolish. So for us, it's a very stressful thing, you know, to know that you know, your call one way or another can shape a perfect race or a not so perfect race, right? So it's fun. It's obviously a new challenge. It's a little bit different than just running out there and changing a wheel or whatever, you know. So it's been a fun ride to do this, but also very, very much a stressful one as well. Yeah. And for me, I remember my first race in Indy Lights like it was yesterday. It's funny, Richard Antonucci, we led the entire race in Homestead and got past with 4 or 5 to go. Our tires went away, but I remember thinking to myself, like, man, this is easy. You know, we led everything, ended up finishing second. That first year was kind of a whirlwind for me. It was learning how to work on race cars, learning how to, you know, keep up with the tempo of a race weekend, learning all sorts of things. So that first race and that first year generally for me was a really big deal. Winning the Freedom 100 with Esteban was also a big deal because for me, Indy is everything, right? So winning a race there, even though it was in an Indy Lights car and the Freedom 100, was a big deal for me. And then my first experience at Indy was also a very big deal. But yeah, I would say that those experiences are pretty big for me. Yeah, I mean, like I just said, for me, Indy is no question the most important event to me. It means more to me than just about anything, right? So as you can imagine, when the gun went off and we're sitting there and that you come to the realization that, yes, you will not make the race, that was a tough pill to swallow. But we had really great support from our owners and each other. And I think that it was that night we sat everybody down and said, look, we have to pull the tear off on this one. This can't go to Detroit. This can't go to Texas after that. We need to figure out how to get over this. You know, our main sponsor in Aero, their CEO Mike Long was there, and he was by us the whole time. And he actually came up and said, I want to get the whole team together. I have a couple things to say. And we got the entire team together in the garage that night. And he basically, you know, I can't repeat everything that he said, but he said, bottom line, this is not our worst day. You know, he pointed to Sam and said, this is not Sam's worst day. He said, this is not my worst day. He said, I've been on the brink of bankruptcy with Aero 3 or 4 times, and that this pales in comparison. He said, all this was a bad day. We didn't make the race. You know, we have to move on and we have to continue to do our job. So for me, it was a huge pill to swallow, but at the same time, it was an opportunity for me and the team to learn how to deal with adversity like that. on such a big scale, and to see kind of what we're made of. So while you don't want things like that to happen, it's also a great lesson, and a great challenge for us to be able to overcome, and it shows what kind of team we are to be able to do that. I suppose I would say for me, it's doing it the right way. I was very lucky to come and work for this team when I did, because it gave me an opportunity to work with Chris Griffis. And I don't know if a lot of guys or a lot of people that will be watching this have ever met Chris, and if they have, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But Chris was a guy that I'm not sure anybody could come up with a bad thing to say about him. He was an excellent leader. He was a more excellent person. And for me, ultimately, I've been lucky enough to work with a handful of people like that since I worked with Chris. Pierce Phillips being one of those, Sam being one of those guys, high character, high integrity people. For me, when I walk away, I want people to talk about me the same way they talk about Chris. To be able to say, man, that guy was a really good guy. He was a good mechanic, he was good this, he was good that, but he was just a really good person. And hopefully I can impart some of that to some of the younger guys that we have here. I say that and further on in my career, try to impart that work ethic and integrity and type of character and that that he taught me, and hopefully I can pass that on. I think ultimately that would make this paddock a better place, and hopefully the sport in general.